proceeding towards a successful letting.
Thanks, John. Can everybody hear me okay? We good? All right, I'm getting a thumbs up from the back. So we're going to talk about a couple different kinds of permits: 404 permits, Iowa DNR Floodplain Permits, NPDES Stormwater Permits, and work on Iowa DOT right-of-way permits. So a 404 permit is required when impacts to water resources are governed by Section 404, that's why it's called a 404 permit, of the Clean Water Act. So they're governed by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and the Iowa DNR. And a permit would be required when any fill or dredged material will be placed in waters of the U.S. So waters of the U.S. Are impoundments of waters, tributaries, you know, like lakes and rivers and such things like that. There's a nationwide permit. That's kind of the least regulated, I guess. Less than half an acre of a water of the U.S. A regional permit would need to be used for those projects that have between a half of an acre and 1 acre of impacts to waters of the U.S. And then an individual permit would be needed if you're really significantly impacting a water of the U.S., so 1 acre or more. All this information is in IM 3.130, which is titled 404 Permit Process, and I'm in the middle of trying to update this IM right now. So we've had our review of our IM review team, and it's just down at DNR and at the Corps of Engineers right now, but I'm hoping that they don't have many changes. We just kind of changed some things like from the 2012 permits, it never got updated. So yeah, just some basic changes, nothing huge, but that'll be coming out as soon as we get DOT and Corps concurrence back. So a DNR floodplain permit is required sometimes, and basically you can take a look at IM 3.410 attachment B, and that'll kind of explain where you might need a floodplain permit. Kind of if you're doing channel changes or bank stabilization activities, or something with a dam or something. And then the need for the permit depends on the drainage area as well. And those requirements are different for cities versus counties, only because if you're in a city, you know, a lot more damage could occur if you put in too small of a box or something. So you can refer to the IM for more information on DNR floodplain permits. This is more just to let you guys know there might be other permits out there. Please read, you know, these documents. An NPDES stormwater permit may be required if you're disturbing 1 or more acres in your construction project. Basically, if you're, you know, turning dirt, you're gonna probably need one if you're an acre or more. You can look at IM 3.140 stormwater permits for more information. That one just did get updated with our February IM revision, so that one's brand new. And then work on Iowa DOT right-of-way. It's just like it sounds. If you're working on the DOT right-of-way, you're going to need a permit. That's pretty basic, but there's some information on who to contact. We have a brochure online that you can take a look at. It's at Needs Answers. It used to be like a trifold type of brochure, and now I don't think they're printing it anymore. It's just online. And again, you can always talk to your administrating office if you have questions on who to contact if you are working in the DOT right away. That's it. So we'll get Christy up here. Any questions? I flew through that pretty fast, but I'm sure you guys are hungry, so.
All right, thanks, Nicole. And now we'll have Christy Van Buskirk go over, she's our District 5 local systems engineer, and she'll be speaking about design and plan reviews, preliminary design, excuse me, and I'll just let her go ahead.
Thanks, John. My name name is Christy Van Buskirk. I'm with the District 5 Local Systems Office. I will be covering design and plan reviews in the project development process today, from the concept statement stage to the plan turn-in for a DOT letting. I'm not as well versed as our prior speakers, so I'm going to be using notes. So I'm going to sit down. If you have any questions, try to get my attention. If you're going to throw anything, throw something soft, okay? All right, there are 3 helpful and important tools you can use in the project development process. Number 1, the instructional memorandums to local public agencies, otherwise known as the IMs. They are the best written resource for guidance and answers to project development questions. Number 2, district. Well, as many of you are aware, the project development process is continually evolving. There seems to be many recent changes that have not been incorporated into the IMs. For clarification on these items or general questions, you can contact your local systems, district, or Ames office staff. I would suggest starting with the district staff first. And number 3, use the IM checklist in preparing your plan submittals. We use them in our plan and design reviews. If you include them on the checklist in your submittal, the review and approval process is easier for everyone. There are 4 key stages in project development: concept statement, preliminary plans, check plans, and the final plans and contract items. Nicole touched briefly on the concept statement submittal in her presentation. I will go into a little more detail. The concept statement is not all-inclusive, but its purpose is to outline your project scope and design on paper and help determine what else you need to do as you develop your project. If we look at the form, there are some common glitches and hang-ups. The first, a revised box. Only mark revised if you are submitting a revised concept statement to an approved concept statement. When you submit a concept statement, we review and may ask you to address our comments and resubmit the concept statement. However, it is still considered the first concept statement until it is approved. The STIP year. This is the year the project is programmed. Project location and STIP description. Please use the STIP description. Having an accurate, concise description of the project in your STIP programming is key. For bridges, list the street and feature crossed, such as 230th Street over Crooked Creek. For roads, list the street or streets and the project's beginning and termini, such as 230th Street from Apple Avenue to Dumpling Boulevard. You do not need to list extraneous information like section range township, point 2 miles north of an intersection, etc. If you provide an accurate, concise description and mark it correctly on the maps and TPMS, GIS will take care of the rest and you will make FHWA happy. If the STIP description needs to be revised, begin the process as soon as possible. This can delay federal aid agreements, clearances, and plan turn-in if the project is not correctly programmed. The letting date. Remember the programming window of confusion, July through October for federal aid projects. For example, if you have a project in the August 2016 letting, it will need to be programmed in your county's FY 2017 5-year program and in your fiscal year 2016 STIP. Project costs. There has been an uptick in cities and counties using federal aid for preliminary and some construction engineering services. Please be sure to check yes if you intend to use federal aid for this work. Easements. If your project will require easements, please note this. To expedite NEPA and SHPO clearances, it is best to slightly overestimate your easement needs and provide an aerial map depicting the easement locations. If the anticipated temporary construction or right-of-way needs go beyond the original approved concept statement during subsequent design phases, a reevaluation will be required by OLE. Borrow. use, quote, not yet determined as a as a last resort. OLE will need the location of the borrow site in order to clear the project. Structures greater than 50 years old. When we think of structures, we usually think of buildings. However, for many bridge projects, the bridge itself can be greater than 50 years old. If it is, mark yes. We check to see if it is on the Iowa DOT Historical Bridge List. It usually is not. Archaeological survey. OLE may determine a survey is needed based on the concept statement and supporting documentation. I believe the prior, it just went blank. I believe one of our prior presenters touched on that the University of Iowa can provide a cultural resources evaluations for free. So I would contact Brennan Dolan or OLE staff to determine that. Army Corps of Engineer 404 permit. You should be beginning the application process by this stage. Most work is covered under a nationwide permit, which is fairly straightforward and a relatively short application. IM 3.13 covers the Army Corps of Engineer 404 permit process in detail. Environmental data sheet. This is no longer required with concept statement submittals unless the project is adjacent to and/or will affect park or recreational lands. Determination of effect, otherwise known as the DOE or Section 7 form. This form and supporting documentation is not required with the concept statement submittal. However, we highly suggest turning the completed form and supporting documentation in with the concept statements. OLE will not clear the project without this information. I can't speak for other districts, but we request it before approving the concept statement. We have seen projects languish at this stage due to the lack of this information. As a result, our district forwards the approved concept statement and the DOE information to the Office of Location and Environment to streamline the process. As Mary Kay alluded to earlier, IM 3.111, Threatened and Endangered Species, covers this item in detail. Railroads. If your project involves work within the railroad right-of-way, begin the discussions with the railroad early. Depending on the railroad and work, this can delay a project for months. IMs 3.67, work on railroad right-of-way, and IM 3.68, federal aid projects involving railroads, cover this item in some detail. However, if you have any questions at all, please give your district office a call. This item is definitely evolving and it is really easy to miss a step. Project design elements. This information is provided on page 3 of the concept statement. If the project covers multiple roadway segments with differing geometric elements and/or proposed design criteria, page 3 should be filled out for each segment. Which design guide should you use? We'll begin with rural roadways. Start by reviewing IM 3.21 Rural Design Guidelines. The design aid tables provide the preferred design criteria for new construction or reconstruction projects. You should use these tables in your design if possible. If for some reason, if all or part of the design aid criteria cannot be met, review the AASHTO guideline tables in the same IM. If you meet this criteria and decide to use these values in your design, please note this in the concept statement and provide an explanation in your concept statement submittal as to why you're using these tables. The district office will review these requests on a project-by-project basis. If for some reason, if all or part of the AASHTO guideline criteria cannot be met in your design, a design exception will be required. IM 3.218, which is the design exception process, covers the design exception process and required documentation in detail. Please note this on the concept statement submittal and provide the design exception request. Again, the district office will consider these requests on a project-by-project basis. Let's move on to urban roadways. Roadways with an urban cross-section or rural sections in an urban area. Similar process, different reference. Begin by reviewing Chapter 5 in the statewide urban design and specifications, otherwise known as SUDAS. Chapter 5 covers roadway design for urban streets. Section 5C-1 provides geometric design tables to determine your design parameters. The preferred tables provide the preferred design criteria for new construction or reconstruction project. As mentioned, for rural design, you should use these tables in your design if possible. If for some reason, if the preferred criteria cannot be met, review the acceptable tables. If you meet this criteria and decide to use these values, please provide an explanation and provide that in your concept statement submittal. If for some reason, if all or part of the acceptable criteria cannot be met in your design, a design exception will be required. As I noted previously, IM 3.218 covers the design exception process. Please note this on the concept statement and provide the design exception request with your concept statement submittal. Again, the district office will consider these requests on a project-by-project basis. Moving on to resurfacing, restoration, and rehabilitation projects, otherwise known as 3R projects. IM 3.214, 3R guidelines, covers the 3R process and design criteria in detail. There are corresponding tables for rural and urban roadways. If you're using 3R criteria, you will need to provide an explanation of how you are addressing the 7 safety considerations in IM 3.214. If for some reason, if all or part of the 3R criteria cannot be met in your design, a design exception will be required. Again, use IM 3.218 to prepare your design exception request. Note this on your concept statement and provide the design exception request with your concept statement submittal. Again, we'll consider these requests on a project-by-project basis. The reason why I'm stressing this is that many times this information, the explanation or the design exception request, is missing from the concept statement submittal. This information is critical. We cannot provide plan reviews until the design criteria is established and the concept statement is approved. The next 8 slides cover other items on page 3 of the concept statement. IM 3.213, traffic barriers, which includes guardrail and bridge barrier rail, is going through a complete overhaul. I checked the website yesterday, and I didn't see where it's been updated yet, but I know that I see a hand go up.
It will be updated with our revision that is going to go out, I believe, in 2 weeks. So
Okay,
in less than 2 weeks, it will be live on the website.
Thank you, Nicole. I'll just do a really brief summary. Major changes include adding information on the different test levels of crash testing and the definition of crashworthy. Number 2, revising wording on the guardrail requirements and turned a quote shall to a quote should but not required to. Number 3, remove the requirement for an official design exception to not install guardrail for roads less than 400 vehicles per day. Number 4, added an attachment which provides information on which guardrail standards to use and includes a 60-foot long guardrail that meets TL2 MASH and is allowed for use on roadways less than 400 vehicles per day. Number 5, eliminating attachment A, bridge barrier rail rating system. And 6, replacing attachment A with easy to follow criteria on when bridge barrier rail should, but is not necessarily required to, be upgraded. And finally, number 7, providing guidance on using bridge barrier rail systems that meet TL1 when an Iowa DOT standard bridge is not being utilized, and a web page link for designs of various TL1 barrier rails. So that's the preview on that one. Clear zone guidance. Simply put, the clear zone is the total roadside border area starting at the edge of the traveled way, available for safe recovery of errant vehicles. This area may consist of a shoulder, a recoverable slope, a non-recoverable slope, and or a clear runout area. IM 3.215, Clear Zone Guidelines provide definitions, guidance, and values for rural roadways. The Clear Zone tables in SUDAS Chapter 5 provide the corresponding definitions, guidance, and values for urban roadways. Preferred and acceptable tables are used in your analysis, similar to the geometric design criteria. If for some reason, if all or part of the preferred values cannot be met in your design, review the acceptable tables. If you meet this criteria and decide to use these values in your design, please note this in the concept statement and provide an explanation. If for some reason the clear zone tables in IM 3.215 or the acceptable tables cannot be met, a design exception will be required. Please note this on your concept statement and provide the design exception request. Again, the district office will consider these requests on a project-by-project basis. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities. IM 1.08 ADA requirements provide guidance, to comply with the requirements of the ADA Act of 1990 and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as they apply to pedestrian facilities. All new construction and alteration projects shall follow the requirements set forth in Chapter 12 in both the Iowa DOT Design Manual and SUDAS Design Manual. They contain the same definitions, guidance, and values for pedestrian, bicycle, and shared use path facilities. Accessibility improvements that are outside the scope of the alteration project may be deferred to a later date. Guidance for required or recommended signing and pavement markings is found in MUTC Part 9, Traffic Control for Bicycle Facilities. Also, please note ADA requirements do apply for shared use facilities. Whenever alterations are made to the pedestrian circulation path, the pedestrian access route shall be made accessible to the maximum extent feasible within the scope of the project. If full compliance with Chapter 12 of the Iowa DOT Design Manual is technically infeasible, compliance is required to the extent that is not technically infeasible. So, what can you do if a pedestrian facility cannot be made fully compliant because the accessibility improvements are structurally impractical, technically infeasible, or there are safety issues? You will still need to provide the district office with an accessibility exception certification form, which is Form 517118. Yes, another form. The certification shall include supporting documentation that identifies the specific locations and lists the specific reasons while full compliance cannot be achieved. The certification shall be prepared and signed by a registered professional engineer or landscape architect licensed in the state of Iowa. Iowa DOT and SUDAS also share common specifications in these areas, and they're listed on the slide. This is an example of a shared Iowa DOT and SUDAS standard road plan. The design exception process has been mentioned a number of times in this presentation. As I have mentioned ad nauseum, IM 3.218 design exception process covers the design exception process and required documentation in detail. The design exception process is an 8-step process. I could go into more detail, but I'm not going to for sake of time. But the 8 steps are: determine the type of improvement, determine if the proposed improvement meets current design guides. Number 3, analyze the crash data. Step number 4 is to prepare a cost estimate to bring deficiencies up to current guidelines. Step number 5 would be to calculate the benefit cost ratio. Number 6 is to prepare a written design exception request. Step number 7 is to document the design exception in the project file and Step 8, which is the most important step, is review by the Iowa DOT District Office. Section 5.4 of the Federal Aid Project Development Guide also covers the design exception process. Oh, that was enough for concept. Let's move on to the preliminary plan stage. The purpose of preliminary plans is to present the proposed design of the improvements. Sometimes, part or all of the preliminary plans are provided at the concept statement stage to assist in the environmental review and depict anticipated temporary construction easement and right-of-way needs. Preliminary plans are required for federal aid projects and certain state aid projects. They are not required for projects with only farm-to-market or local funds. If they are not required, they can still be submitted to the district office and reviewed upon request. We can review the preliminary plan submittal without NEPA and SHPO clearances. It is helpful to read through IM 3.405 preliminary plans as you prepare for your submittal. As noted previously, we use IM 3.405 Attachment B, which is the preliminary plan checklist in our review. Please use, follow, and incorporate the items on this checklist in your preliminary plans. If you have a question on an item in the checklist, please call the District Local Systems Office. The Iowa DOT plan format is strongly recommended. Iowa DOT standard road, bridge, and culvert plans may be referenced. Modified standards must be included in the plan set. The use of Iowa DOT design details such as typical sections, tabulations are strongly recommended. That way it makes it easier for the bidder, who should be familiar with constructing facilities using the Iowa DOT specs, to bid the work. Key items to address in the preliminary plan checklist. STIP description and location. The project map and description are checked in TPMS, similar to the review at the concept statement stage. Again, if the STIP description needs to be revised, begin the process as soon as possible. It can delay a lot of things. Letting date. Remember the programming window of confusion. Same comments I noted in the concept statement review. Federal aid programming amounts. You should provide an estimate for Highway Safety Improvement Program, otherwise known as HSIP, and Highway Bridge Program, HBP projects. The federal aid amount should be within 15% of the STIP program amount. If the estimate exceeds 15%, you will need to revise your STIP program to capture the maximum 80% reimbursement. Otherwise, the reimbursement will be calculated at the amount of the federal aid of this program divided by the total estimated cost. For example, you've programmed a bridge project at a total cost of $500,000. $400,000 or 80% HPP participation. The estimate is now at $600,000. If you choose not to revise your STIP programming, the federal aid participation is calculated at $400,000, which is the federal aid amount in your STIP program, divided by $600,000, which is the final cost estimate prior to letting. This equates to 66.67%. This will be your federal aid participation for the project regardless of bids. So it's important. Existing and proposed cross-sections. The cross-section should match what is in the approved concept statement. Right-of-way. The existing proposed right-of-way and temporary construction easements should be shown. The proposed right-of-way and TCE should be approximately the same as the concept statement. If the needs are larger than what the approved concept shows and what OLE cleared, a re-review will be required by OLE. Designer certification block. The certification block should be in compliance with Chapter 193C of the Iowa Administrative Code. No creative alterations. There's been some doozies out there. Sheet index. The sheet index and number of sheets in the preliminary plan submittal should be the same. Vertical profile data. Please provide the percent grade, vertical curve length, K-factor, stopping site distance, and design speed on the sheets. We check for conformance to the approved concept statement. If you are doing an overlay project, you can provide existing as-built plans showing the needed design criteria. Horizontal alignment data. Please provide the point of intersection station, curve length, radius or degree of curvature, tangent length, and delta angle. Sidewalk and trail access. Please provide plan sheets and tabulations. Any alterations to existing facilities or proposed facilities are to be ADA compliant. Overlay projects do not let you off the hook. Utilities. Please provide utility locations on the plan view. For bridge projects, you will also need to review IM 3.41, preliminary bridge or culvert plans, to determine if hydraulic or structural reviews will be required. The IM covers the necessary guidelines, design guidelines for bridge and culvert structures, such as design year flood and clearances for bridges and roadways above flood elevations. It also covers the hydraulic review criteria. Is the structure located in a flood insurance study area? Is the proposed structure have a smaller opening than the current structure? Is the existing bridge being replaced by a culvert? The preliminary plan submittal is to be submitted electronically through TPMS and should include a transmittal letter or email and preliminary plans. Structure projects requiring hydraulic review should also include the hydraulic calculations, Form 1-E, and the risk assessment form. Review by Iowa DOT offices include the district local system staff, offices of bridges and structures, office of location and environment, and other offices as needed for any primary system impacts. Review by other agencies as needed include Iowa DNR, the State Historical Preservation Office, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and private utilities. Moving on to the check plan stage. Both check and final plans are required for all projects led through the Iowa DOT. As implied in the preliminary plan stage, Iowa DOT specs must be used. Where there may be some limited opportunity for editing, Iowa DOT standard bid items are to be used to the fullest extent practical. Check plans should be 100% complete and address all comments from the preliminary plan review. The big question is, are they biddable and constructible? The district office cannot review check plan submittals without NEPA and SHPO clearances. You should not be submitting check plans to our office. You are jeopardizing your federal aid by doing so. It is helpful to read through another IM 3.505, check and final plans as you prepare for your submittal. As noted previously, we use IM 3.505 attachment B, which is the check and final plan checklist in our review. Again, Iowa DOT plan format is strongly recommended. STIP description and location. Again, we check the project map and description in TPMS just like we do in the concept and preliminary plan stages. However, if the STIP description needs to be revised, the timing becomes critical at this stage. That is why we urge you to begin the process as soon as possible. Letting date. Remember that pesky programming window of confusion, July through October for federal aid projects. Sometimes project letting dates slide or get pushed back. It is a good idea to check and make sure your programming is still good. Federal aid programming amounts. You must provide an estimate for HSIP and HPP projects. The same qualifications mentioned in the preliminary plan stage still apply. The estimate should be within 15% of the STIP program amount. If it is greater than 15%, you will either need to revise your STIP program or accept a lower federal aid reimbursement percentage on construction costs. Current design details and road standards. The appropriate Iowa DOT design details and road standards should be referenced in the plans. Use the Iowa DOT Office of Design webpage to make sure you are referencing the current details and standards. Sheet index, same as a preliminary plan review. Make sure numbers add up. They may change from preliminary to check plan states, so be sure to count and include all pages. Certified plant inspection. You will need to note in the estimate reference information if certified plant inspection is required for a specific bid item. Typical bid items include HMA, PCC paving, structural concrete, flowable mortar. If you don't note this, the LPA is responsible for this. Bid item quantities. The planned quantities must match what is input into the bid item application. It's a good idea to access the bid item application system to determine how quantities are rounded. I've actually seen some LPAs copy and paste the bid item application spreadsheet into the plan set. Estimate reference information. Do not repeat Iowa DOT specifications. The bidding documents reference the Iowa DOT specifications. Every time you repeat an Iowa DOT specification, you risk the chance of leaving out a key word or phrase that can change the intent. Cross sections. Same as a preliminary plan review. They should match what is in the approved concept statement. Salvaged items. How are they being handled? The item may be participating or non-participating. Check the IMs to determine how to handle these items. Permits. Iowa DNR stormwater permit. Please use the note in IM 3.505 attachment B if your project is covered under general permit number 2. Iowa DOT standard note 281-2 is for individual permits only. Stormwater permits and topsoil requirements. If a general stormwater permit is required, the project must provide for at least 4 inches of topsoil on non-surface disturbed areas. If your project requires an individual stormwater permit, the permit may have other requirements. Default strip and placement thicknesses are included in the specification for the following bid items, and they're listed on the slide. Pollution prevention plan. Make sure you have the current version. It has project-specific information and is fully signed. Pavement removals. Pavement removal should provide adequate cross-section data and tabulations. On the plan profile sheets, existing and proposed right-of-way, same as the preliminary plan review. All needs must be shown. If the needs are larger than what the approved concept statement shows and what OLE cleared, a re-review will be required. Vertical profile data, same as the preliminary plan review. We check this design criteria to see if it matches up with the concept statement and the design criteria. Traffic control. Make sure you reference the current, not the current, well, you need to reference the current ones too. Make sure you reference the correct TC standards for your project. Address pedestrian access if sidewalk and trail access is affected by the project. Utilities. Please provide utility locations on the plan sheets. Sidewalks. Please provide curb ramp design sheets, a 113-10 sidewalk compliance tabulation, and other tabulations as needed. What time is it? Okay. I'll try to breeze through this here. Pedestrian facilities and traffic must be addressed in the project traffic control and/or staging plan. The design analysis should include the current level of accessibility and the project's impact on pedestrian facilities. The goal is to develop pedestrian accommodations to provide the best accessibility practical during all stages of work. The plan shall indicate how pedestrian traffic will be addressed during construction if it applies to your project. Pedestrian paths may be maintained, closed, or detoured during construction. This may be accomplished by special traffic control notes, details, or other combinations thereof. In all cases, pedestrian paths and/or detours shall comply with ADA and MUTCD requirements. And for the sake of time, they list some options here. They also list that the facilities must be firm, stable, and slip resistant. And as a reference, you can look at Chapter 12 of the Iowa DOT Design Manual for further guidance. For structure projects, you will need to follow IM 3.51. Check and final bridge or culvert plans in developing your check plans. We use IM 3.51 Attachment A, which is the bridge or culvert supplementary checklist in our review. Standard design is a structure using Iowa DOT or bridge or culvert standards. A non-standard design is a structure using modified Iowa DOT standards or custom details. The plan should show bridge fund participation limits and address shop drawing reviews. The plan should also show items such as centerline cross-section, the situation plan, and sounding data information. The plan should also provide information on the existing structure. What are the structure materials and how it will be disposed of? The check plan submittal should be electronically submitted through TPMS and include a transmittal letter or email, check plans, and a detailed cost estimate if the funding requires it. For structure projects, a structural review is required if the structure is on the national highway system. In this case, structural calculations must be provided for an in-depth review, or if a non-standard design is used. In this case, only the plans are needed for a cursory review. Review by Iowa DOT offices include District Local System Staff, Office of Bridges and Structures if needed, Office of Location and Environment, and based on these reviews, the LPA will revise and resubmit the check plans as necessary. Moving on to the final plan and contract item stage. Submittal items are a fully signed final plan set, an FM worksheet if applicable, a cost estimate, a signed project development certification form, Army Corps of Engineers permits for bridge projects, cover letter if you were requesting specific contract time requirements or tied projects, special provisions if applicable, public interest finding if requesting a waiver under a condition listed in IM 3.76, and finally the bid items entered into the bid item application. Final plan should be 100% complete and address all comments from the check plan review. So what does the district check for? Have all the check plan comments been addressed? Do the plan quantities match what is in the bid item application? Is the project correctly programmed in the county STIP and county 5-year program or the city STIP? Is the cost estimate, and this pertains to HSIP and HBP projects, within 15% of the STIP programming? Is the FM worksheet filled out correctly and meet current borrowing restrictions? If applicable, can we approve the public interest finding? The Project Development Certification Form, or otherwise known as the PDC, confirms that all necessary clearances have been obtained and that the letting process may begin for the project. In completing and signing the PDC, the LPA certifies all railroad, utility, work on primary roadway, and right-of-way clearances have been obtained. The Office of Right-of-Way Review, or the Office of Right-of-Way Review may be needed if the appraisal waiver process was not used for right-of-way acquisition. A fully executed PDC must be on file with the Office of Contracts before advertising for bids. And for more information, you can look in IM 3.75 for further guidance. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit, as I noted earlier, would apply to bridge and culvert projects. If a permit is required, a copy must be on file with the Iowa DOT for use by bidders. If you can, I would suggest turning it in with the check plan submittal if possible. It must be turned in with the final plan submittal. If this is not possible, a public interest finding is required. For stormwater permits, the LPA is responsible for obtaining the stormwater permits if required. We do not need a copy of the general permit with the final plan turned in materials. However, if an individual stormwater permit is required, a copy of the permit must be on file with Iowa DOT for use by bidders. The need for an individual permit is determined by the Iowa DNR. Special provisions may be needed for a project, and if so, are part of the final plan submittal. I would recommend identifying the need for special provisions early in the project development process and begin working on them. Special provisions are used to modify existing Iowa DOT specifications or create new specifications. The District Local Systems Office will assign the SP number. The special provision must address 5 areas of interest: a description of the work, material requirements, construction methods and procedures, method of measurement, and basis of payment. Helpful hint, if you go to the specification webpage on the Iowa DOT website and click on the special provisions link on the left-hand side, you will find a list of approved special provisions. You may be able to find one to use as a template to write your own. The link at the bottom of this slide are detailed instructions on how to write a special provision. IM 3.76, Public Interest Findings, provides guidance on and a Form 4, a public interest finding. A public interest finding grants an exception for an established policy of rule and may be only used for certain conditions. The IM lists 6 conditions that require a public interest finding, and I'll let you look those up for time's sake. The condition may be temporary, such as clearances, or permanent, like requesting proprietary items. The temporary conditions must be resolved before the project will be advertised for letting. The public interest finding is turned in with the final plan submittal. The District Local Systems Office will review the request and either approve or deny the request. IM 3.52, Electronic Bid Item Information, provides guidance on how to access and use the bid item application, BIA. A BIA file is required as part of the final plan submittal. It is a web-based process for submitting a project's bid item data for a letting. LPAs or their consultants enter this information into the application and must have an enterprise ANA account using their exact email address used in TPMS. They have to match. When the bid item data is entered into the application, a BIA file is created online and automatically retrieved by the Office of Contracts. Railroad agreements. I think this is going to be covered this afternoon, so I won't touch too much on it. IM 3.76, work on railroad right-of-way, provides general guidelines and procedures for an LPA to obtain approval to work within a railroad's right-of-way. A railroad agreement is required when work is performed within a railroad's right-of-way. The railroad agreement should be submitted to the district local system when it is available. Like I noted earlier, you should begin this process as soon as you can. It must be submitted in with the final plan and turn-in materials. If it is not, a public interest finding will be required. The Office of Contracts uses the contract information to assemble the railroad data for bidders. Also, be sure to check to see if railroad insurance and/or flagger bid items may apply. Okay, we've gone through all of that. If all final plan submittal items are deemed acceptable by district staff, these materials are submitted to the Office of Contracts for the requested